Hi, good evening. We're back once again for another edition of Meteorology Lab, starting about 15 minutes late here, but we're on the ball once again. And that's a quick look outside 45 minutes ago, and I can give you the live outside picture. And I can hear the tractors out there right now. They are baling all that grass, I guess, before we get the rains here in a couple days. Okay, let's look at the charts. There we go. So this time of year, I tend to start out with the SPC analysis because everything is very convective this time of year. It's driven by solar heating. We've got the sun beating down at about maybe 21 to 23 degrees latitude, which is way down here. That's the zone of intense heating. And the lag in the atmosphere is about 2 to 3 months, so that means the actual band of heating is a little further south, and it is still moving to the north. So lots of insulation driven weather, and lots of convection, cumulus, and towers and thunderstorms. So a lot of that in the southwest right now. Very quiet up north there, just a little bit of a squall line up in North Dakota with the next front coming down. There's one look in the desert southwest, and you know that we've had that cold front in the Texas area, and that's pretty much pushed all the way through, all the way to the Big Bend and western New Mexico. And you can see the northeast flow coming in like that. Now, a lot of the wind field is disrupted by all this convection that you see here, but you can see by the pressure outlines, we've got the heat low right here, another heat low over the Death Valley area, and then we have high pressure. Little plateau high there in the Alamosa area, and further back, look at the big picture, big ridge. You got to kind of train your mind to look at big scale features and filter out all the other stuff, and sometimes to look at the small scale features. So the big picture is a big high all the way out here, and you can see how that's driving a density current southwestward gradually through the mountains right there. And then in Texas, obviously, it's going to look like this. Northeasterly flow, and you can see the northerly component. There's a little bit of a component going north to south, but the bulk of it upslope into West Texas right there. And this is a good pattern for showers in West Texas, and we certainly see that there. A little bit even in Del Rio, where it's normally very dry. And out in the Gulf, southerly flow pretty much swept out even all the way down there. So that's quite a front that we've had. Now, one little tool that I like to use is the high split model. I don't think I've ever really demonstrated this on here, but if you want to do this procedure, you go to this ready.arl.noaa.gov. And this model is used heavily in emergency management with spills and that kind of thing. There's some really good tools here to go and predict where the plumes are going to be spreading. Now, what I like to use is this trajectory model. And then I'll go into forecast trajectories. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at where the air masses in different parts of the country have come from. Maybe we'll just do Texas for now. Okay, so this first page that you go to, this is where you select what model you want to use. The rapid refresh for what we're doing, this is a 2 small scale. So we want to use the GFS. So this 192 hour would be a good one. All right. Now, this next page, or this next section, you can just put DFW. Type that in and you should be good to go. So model and forecast location. Okay, then you select which model you're going to pretty much use. 18Z, that's pretty much correct. However, we're going to go backwards. And then in this section right here, we're going to start it at 1Z, which is right now. Let's see, we're going to do a new trajectory, I guess, every 3 hours. And then this next section, I like to use the height. I'm going to use 500 meters, which is a little bit off the ground. Actually, no, I'll bring this really close to the ground. I'll go 5 meters, 500, and then 1500. So that's going to be about maybe close to the surface, 1500 feet, and about 5,000 feet. So those are 3 different levels we're going to look at. Okay. The next section, I don't really mess with this too much. Everything in here should be good. Then I can just go to request trajectory. Let me zoom this out a little bit so you can see better. And then it's going to work up that trajectory. And you can see it computing right there. Periodically the page will reload, and then in about a minute it will be ready. So you just click on GIF and you can view the amazing results right there. Okay, let's see, we've got a little bit of a confusing pattern here. Did I request forward trajectories? I think I might have. However, there's DFW, and these are the inbound trajectories right there, and we can see that the origin of the air mass at pretty much all levels is from Indiana and Illinois. So pretty amazing tool there. And I'm sure Ryan is here, and we can take a look at his area, Miami. We'll do one more here. I'm not sure how I got a forward trajectory on here. I'm going to try resetting that back to the default. Let that run, and we're looking at Miami, Florida. And we're going to see where those air masses came from. So this is, you know, kind of fun to use, and kind of reinforces what you see on the weather maps. Okay, there we go, much better, and you can see the trajectories from Miami. They've come from just west Cuba, just west of Cuba, across Jamaica, and out in the Atlantic right there. And you can see the low-level trajectories are red. So those have come from a little bit more of a polar source, from the middle of the Bermuda High. And then the mid-level trajectories up at about 0.5 to 1.5 kilometers, they've come from a more tropical source region. And then I'm going to do just one more. I'm going to look at Phoenix. I'm kind of curious where their air masses have come from. So I'll put those guys in and calculate that. And while I wait on this, I'm going to look at the chat, make sure there's no audio problems. I brought up the microphone levels just a bit because I was actually doing a game streaming test, and it sounded very, very weak. Okay, so here's the Phoenix trajectory. Low level, or actually the surface trajectory, is red, and we can see the origin has been from the Gulf of California. and Baja California. And then the upper level trajectories, the 1,500-foot one coming from the Pacific, likewise. And then you get a little bit off the ground up at about 5,000 feet, and we've got more of an origin of the Gulf of Mexico. So you can definitely see how some of this moisture is getting into Arizona. And there's been a lot of debate about the monsoon in Arizona over the years, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Scientists were arguing over whether the important air mass source was the Gulf of California or whether it was the Gulf of Mexico. And it's very tough to determine this due to all the frictional effects, but we can see that maybe both areas are important. Okay, let's head to the charts here. You can see we're building quite a ridge out west. Here's that one ridge we were looking at last night, and then we've got a new one really coming together here on the west coast. So what that's going to do is that's just going to enhance the northwest flow. So instead of getting it going from the Hudson Bay area, we're developing that from the west coast. So it looks like more mild weather across the northeast U.S. That should kick some air masses south. And then let's look at the upper level ridge. You can see we've got it over the Big Bend area. And previously, as we go back, that ridge was more over West Texas. Okay, here's a look at the fun surface chart. So we'll look at that while we take a look at chat. We've got Sue M here, and Andrew Fun with Tech is here, and Justin. Carl Berghoff made it in tonight, and he sent me an email with some pictures, and I'll be looking at that later, and I appreciate that. Tom J is here. Ron Chalfont. Justin getting the hang of the new camera. And I think that's to Carl there with his, I think Carl got a new Canon. HFR 550 or something. Okay, David Moore, couldn't ask for a better. July 31st. Yeah, we're at the end of the month here, and we've already dropped to 83. But the important thing is that the air mass is very dry. And you can see that at noon here at DFW, look at that dew point there. Actually, this looks like Waco, but there it is. There's a dew point, 16. That's going to be about 61 Fahrenheit, and that really, you can feel that difference when you're out there. I was out last night, and even though it was still 80 degrees, man, it felt nice. Tom J saying monsoon storms popping up around Las Cruces. Tom is right there. And you can see the pressure gradient working northwestward from the Gulf of Mexico, bringing in that tropical air up the Rio Grande and into the interiors. Justin commenting on that, those nice sunsets from Carl. I might see if I can pull out that email he sent. Contrast brightness. Burl H got the book order. Glad to hear it. Yeah, guys, if I don't think I've ever really plugged my products, but please, if you want to get some forecast books, go to weathergraphics.com. This is my site, and I've got all the books right here. And the ones I would say you want to have are the weather analysis and forecasting. That's the big one. Maybe severe storm forecasting if you're interested. The Red Book is a good reference source. It has a lot of techniques and obscure tricks you use during the analysis process. And then, of course, Weather Map Handbook. So those are some good ones to look at. So Yeah, definitely check into that. Head back to the charts here. Okay, the big scale picture. Let's see. How do we analyze this chart? Well, it looks like a big mess. But the way you break this down, you start looking at the dominant pressure features. So we can see big high over the Western Canadian area. So it's centered right there over Alberta, all the way up to maybe the Yukon. And then once you find that, you kind of look at some of the isobars to find the extent of that high. So it clearly extends out into the Gulf of Alaska, out across the Aleutians like that. So that's basically your polar air mass, kind of a maritime polar air mass. And what else do we see? We've got low pressure out in the Hudson Bay area. We've got another high across the Midwest right here. So that's another air mass. So let me draw these out. There's the Midwest air mass. Here's the Canadian air mass. And then we've got the tropical air masses. I don't know if you can see that. It's off the Atlantic coast. And then another little piece of the Pacific high pressure. This low pressure that we see out in the Pacific, this is kind of unusual. This time of year, we expect to see a big 1030 millibar high covering this area. So we've got kind of a rare migratory system coming through. And then in between, we've got this next system coming out of the Canadian prairies. And then to the south, we've got that old front all the way out into the Gulf, and then backed up into the Las Cruces area, maybe Deming, Safford, and maybe all the way to Phoenix and Flagstaff. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's quite all the way to Phoenix, but we'll check. So that's how you go about analyzing a very detailed chart like this. So now we've got a very solid picture of what's happening with the weather. Now, up at 200 millibars, this is up at about 40,000 feet. There's that big high over the Big Bend area. We got a bit of a jet across the Great Plains. Is that polar or is that subtropical? Well, we've got high pressure, kind of a baroclinic high across the Midwest. So I would be inclined to say that this is part of the polar front jet. We've probably got a bit of a split flow pattern. 500 millibars kind of showing a similar picture. High pressure looks to be centered across Abilene. 700 millibars showing that high pretty much right over Abilene. 850 up at 5,000 feet. Picture gets a little bit more complicated, but looks like we got that high right there over Kansas. Maybe another one over the Ohio Valley area. Then down at 925, we start getting down into the surface pattern, and we've got a big polar high across the Midwest, and then we can see the backed flow banked up into the Rockies. The theta analysis, potential temperature. How do you analyze this? This chart looks like a mess also. Let me grab some LaCroix here real quick. I promise you this is not beer or anything. Okay, David Moore building an arc yet. Ryan says it's coming, big squall line in the next hour. Maybe I'll bring that up and look at Florida. And this is kind of what we do. We kind of build our analysis as we go. Bring up the Miami radar here. So this is a good test here. If you notice the stream dropping out, let me know. It's probably because we're bringing in these level 2 files. But they're only a couple of megabytes, so no problem there. Okay, so how do you analyze this chart? Well, the way I would do it is start with the highest values of theta. This is potential temperature. This is basically temperature reduced to sea level. So we can see a very warm air mass across Nevada. And the extent of that, you just kind of look at the dominant area it covers, Nevada and Utah. And then at the other extreme, we've got some of the air mass covering the Midwest and the Tennessee, Kentucky area. So this is a cold air mass. And it extends all the way into Kansas. You see right there? That's a meso high, showing up very well there. See that outflow boundary right there? You can pick that out plain as day. Okay, then the synoptic scale, high, that's pretty much covering this area, maybe all the way up across the meso high, and then you can kind of see in between this warm air mass and the cold air mass, we've got the front banked up right there in Mexico, banked up right around Las Cruces right there, maybe all the way to Deming. And then I guess it's stuck in Colorado still. See that right there? So if we go to Grand Junction and we see very warm conditions, Salt Lake City and southwestern Wyoming, that would tell us that this front is still hung up in the mountains right there. Then up north we can kind of see the next front maybe coming southward. I don't know, something like that. Wow, so we got a really solid picture of what's happening here. Let's check down in Florida. Let's see here. We got a little bit of a line. Looks a little bit maybe elevated slightly. No high intensities in here, and there it is right there. Pretty much across Lake Okeechobee up to Melbourne and then down to around the Fort Myers area. And then tops on these storms. Looks like we're topping out at about 41,000. Yeah, about 41 to 42,000 feet on these storms. Okay, let's see here. What else do we got? Let's look at the satellite picture. There's those storms out in the New Mexico area, also in Tucson. And that front, we know that it's probably pushed into Mexico, maybe all the way through here. And then up to Colorado like that. So plenty of moisture in the desert southwest. Here in Texas, not much of a sea breeze because of the northerly component. But we've got a lot of upper level moisture. This is debris, some upper level moisture coming from all this southwest U.S. convection, and it kind of just floats around north of the high and into our area. And that's the reason we see a lot of that. Where's my camera? Yeah, it's the reason we got a lot of that cirrus out there right now. Okay, hopefully that's coming together really well for you guys. So if you've been kind of following this, and I've been kind of understandable here, you should have a very solid picture of what's happening across North America right now. And a lot of upper level moisture pretty much all over the place. Some dry air in Florida, and that's probably affecting those storms a little bit. Maybe some dry air entrainment to the ground. I'm not sure. I would have to look at more charts out in the area. But out in Texas, you can see the upper level high right there. So clockwise flow going around that high. And the very high humidities right there, that's supporting all that anvil debris coming into Texas. Okay, very neat there. Let's check out the tropics. Do we have anything going on? Well, this map is kind of a mess, but you can see Africa right there, South America right here. There's a quick look at the coastlines. And we see a little bit of, actually a whole lot of dust coming out of Africa. So these thunderstorms that we've had, these storms, I don't know if I've talked about this too much, but these actually originate from fronts in the Mediterranean. So we get frontal systems probably coming from the U.S., so kind of a big cycle of life of these systems. But high pressure drives southward into Egypt as very, very weak fronts. The disturbances kind of work across the Sahara like that, where they hit the better moisture. We have Habub thunderstorms in Sudan, Central African Republic, areas like that. And then they work eastward or westward as easterly waves. And when they come off the African coast with good thunderstorm outflow, they can pick up just tons of moisture, and you can see it dispersing out over the Atlantic right there. A pretty good plume. Let's see if we can see it. This is around Dakar, I think. Yeah, there's some dust right there. I think it'd be kind of cool to find a live cam at Dakar, and maybe I can capture it and animate it. That would be kind of an interesting project there. But you can see some of that dust almost all the way to Puerto Rico. So that may make it into Florida soon. And a little bit of dust here in the central Gulf. Looks like a lot of smoke up there in the Canadian prairie provinces. Coastlines are coming up. I don't know, trying to come up, but there's Alberta. So tons of smoke across Edmonton and central Saskatchewan. And if anybody knows the source of this, let me know. I haven't followed this too much. I guess they're having wildfires somewhere, but I'd be curious to know. Let's see if we can see that on the surface charts. I'm going to go to this UCAR site, weather.rap.ucar.edu/surface. And I can pick out the British Columbia chart. I guess they're not showing the smoke too much here, but you can see the cool air working its way southward. Yeah, these guys are reporting some smoke. Okay, hopefully I'm not boring you all. Let's just kind of continue, and I guess we've kind of reached the end of the observational charts. Maybe I'll do one little sounding here. Trying to see if we have any data. University of Wyoming not working, so I'll go to UCAR. So the Fort Worth sounding for this evening looking like this. Very steep lapse rate. See that right there? When I see a steep lapse rate this time of year like that, I mean, man, this is almost absolutely unstable, following the dry adiabat right there. So that tells me probably a lot of air mass modification. So we very much got a cold over warm situation. So with a warm upper level layer, this kind of just gives us stratocumulus and low clouds. And then aloft, you can kind of see a lot of moisture all the way up the column at all these stations. Okay, wow, this is a weird feature. The Midland sounding, look at this. Normally don't see the tropopause that apparent. This is way up at about 51,000 feet. Yeah, Del Rio showing that feature right there. There must be some very strong subsidence in the stratosphere to be producing that. Yeah, Tucson looking a little bit more normal there. But yeah, man, with Tucson, actually, let me go to El Paso. We might pick up a little bit of that monsoon flow coming up. And yeah, very prominent inverted V and up at 700 millibars. Very moist conditions. And this is, we've seen from the trajectories that in the mid-levels, the air mass source region is the Gulf of Mexico. So this is Gulf air, making it all the way up into the 5,000, 10,000 foot range in the New Mexico area. And then if we lift that, yeah, we've definitely got some cape there. Elevated cape, but still very capable of producing downburst winds. You can see the wet bulb temperature at the surface, about 68, 67 Fahrenheit, and that contrasts very sharply with the surrounding air. So very good downburst potential in that area. Okay, time to head into the forecast, and we'll do the mesoscale model here. Let me get a bit of my drink here and take a look at chat. Okay, quick look outside on our webcam here. Yeah, there's a last look at the July sky. So we're heading into August here. Things are going to get a little bit more tropical, and then we'll have the lead-in into fall. So that cold weather is going to be coming soon, and we're going to be looking at Halloween coming here. And Labor Day, of course, and I'll probably be heading to San Antonio for that, and maybe try to do a live cast down there with Greg. I don't know how many of you were here. You remember back in May we were drinking microbrew. Wasn't microbrew. It was some small labels, and we were doing the charts and having a lot of fun there. Okay, for tonight in West Texas, let's check out the storms in New Mexico. Where does that go? Wow, forms up into a little bit of an MCS here, moving down towards Midland, Monahans, and maybe even El Paso. And I'm looking at Las Cruces there. Looks like maybe just continued overnight storms. And then they die off towards midday. A little bit of activity, too, in Oklahoma. A little bit of elevated storms. And those kind of move south to Fort Worth, so it should be kind of a cloudy day in this area. Okay, bringing out the medium-term forecast. Here we've got the NAM, and we're looking at precipitation. Okay, so there's the MCS, and this is the NAM 3 kilometer, and they're focusing very heavily on that Midland, to Hobbs and Artesia area. A little bit of a push into the Caprock area, and then by afternoon looks like a big debris mess over DFW and the Red River. New storms forming overnight in the DFW area. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, there's midnight and there's 3 in the morning. So I guess we're picking up some good southeasterly flow feeding these things. When you get a good overnight outbreak, usually they're being fed a lot of fuel, and you can see a little bit of an MCS moving south. 9 in the morning on Wednesday into East Texas, Waco, and Abilene. And there it goes. South to Houston, and then dies off by nighttime. Another MCS in Minnesota there on Wednesday night. And then we get to the end of the run. Okay, let's look at our moisture there. There's the GFS. This is basically our moisture depth. Looking at 5,000 feet. So we're kind of floating aloft in a balloon, 5,000 feet, looking at moisture. And you can see tons of it in West Texas and New Mexico and Arizona. So this is that monsoon flow feeding up into this area. So into Wednesday and Thursday, looks like it affects the southwest mostly. A little bit of redevelopment there in Texas. Thursday and Friday and Saturday, pretty much the same area, lots of rain. And then we see it gradually moving north into Colorado and Wyoming. So a little bit of that precip spreading north next week on Tuesday. And then we get it spreading back up into the Central Plains, and then eventually the Midwest here late next week. And there we go, more of a prevailing westerlies type situation. Bringing down some cold air. And then the tropical air rebuilding back on the 15th. So very interesting pattern this time of year, and I'm very happy about that. Usually we're dominated by that southerly flow in the Bermuda High, which is very, very boring. Let's look at the precipitable water. Should show pretty much the same thing, focusing on West Texas and Arizona and New Mexico. And very high precipitable waters remain in Texas, so lots of precip chances over the next week or so. And then that moisture finds its way in the Midwest by the 10th, midweek next week. So eventually you should get a pattern change there, those of you in Indiana. And it looks like a bit of a tropical system well off to the south. Look at that out in the Gulf. This is on the 10th. It's probably too far south to affect Texas, but some of the moisture makes its way northward on the 15th. Okay, then we'll kind of cap that off, I guess, with, oh yeah, check out the streamlines. This is 5,000 feet, or 2,500 feet. You can definitely see that flow up in Arizona from the New Mexico area. And then 850 up at 5,000 feet. Flow coming mostly from Texas into the southwest. Okay, so we'll end with, I don't know, we'll look at the 200 millibar pattern real quick. This is giving me an idea where the intense heat is focusing, and that looks like it's mostly in the Mexico area. So temperature's probably pretty mild in the New Mexico area. And look at that little jet segment coming into Texas on Thursday. Yeah, so the big high is staying pretty far south. Oops. went the wrong way. Yeah, staying pretty far south there in northwest New Mexico. All right, so yeah, we've got a very interesting pattern there. There's NHC. Emily, what? I didn't know we had a tropical depression already. 1,007 millibars. That's very, very weak. 30 knots. Moving northeast at 10 knots. Okay, yeah, I remember we were looking for that potential for development out there in the Carolinas area. So, do the track on that. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, so we're looking at basically a tropical storm here, 39 to 73 miles an hour. And that stays pretty much off the coast. Okay, yeah, usually what I do about this time, I finish up with the pressure and precipitation. And let me take a look at the chat. Good to see 20 of you in here, and I very much appreciate you all watching. I'm trying to buffer NATOs. Little buffering with GR level 2. Yes, okay. Let me read this chat here. Audio is good. So far, no buffering. Duluth talking about highs in the upper 50s Thursday. Man, that's nice and cold there. Carl Berghoff says, and may need to place another order with Tim. Very much appreciated. And I do all the book fulfillment right here. Weather graphics is not a big business by any means. It's basically just me here receiving orders, processing them here on my desk, and then I set them out for the mail carrier, and they come by and pick it up. Webcast segment going over my books. It's a good idea. Thanks, Justin. David's going to be getting a book, probably looking at Weather Radar Handbook. He's a GR2 nerd. Art of Storm Chasing video. Yeah, you know, that's a video from 1999. We did that on a Macintosh computer with a cheap iOmega device. I forgot the name of the thing, but it was amazing what we were able to do with that technology back in '99. We had hard drives like limited to 1 gigabyte, so that was quite a project there, and we assembled it all on a AG 1980 SVHS machine. David recommending the WDTB courses, and yeah, I recommend that too. A lot of those are put together by Jim Ledoux. He's a personal friend of mine, and some of the other people there at WDTB. So good stuff there. And Jim Ledoux, he's a very sharp guy. And that's definitely one of the other places to go. And also Comet. Check that out too. Okay, some of you getting buffering during that GR2 thing. And I'm just scanning chat here real quick. Tim needs a tablet logged into a different YouTube account. Yeah, I feel like what I need is like more screens here. I need like an overhead screen, kind of like from The Matrix. Seabreeze hung up around where Justin is, and I forgot where Justin is located. Oh yeah, south of Houston. Michael, I find the stream so much better than many subscription services, so I gladly throw in $5 a month, and every little bit is appreciated. And what I'm trying to do, as I've told a lot of you, I'm trying to get symmetric DSL here. The minimum rates are like $300 a month, and it's a minimum 24-month contract. So I've got to be absolutely sure I have the support for that before I go in for that expense. but the minimum I can get here is 3 up and 3 down, and that's enough to put out a very high quality stream. And if I get quite a bit more money, I can probably upgrade that to 6 and 6. And we're out in the country, so it is kind of a big deal here getting fast internet. I mean, man, look at that outside. We're just we are about 12 to 15 miles from the nearest town. We're quite a ways out there. Sue M says, all my house dust comes from Africa. That's a good question. I think maybe some of it does, but a lot of it probably local. Because, you get some of the fields around there drying out from time to time, and a little bit of dust gets raised from that. Easily transportable around the local area. Most of it inside comes from you and your family. Well, yeah, could be all that dander, especially if you have animals. Fun with Tech says Elephant Hill fire in British Columbia, 194,000 acres. How big is that? How big is 294,000 acres? The way we do that, $194,000. Take the square root of that, and we get 440. And then multiply that times 200, because an acre is about 200 feet on a side, and then divide by 5284 miles. So that's about a box 16 by 16 miles, and that's kind of spread across an area. It's not like a big 16 by 16 block, but that does show you how extensive this area is. That's about the size of a very large city. Let me give you something to look at while I finish the rest of the chat. Yeah, you guys can check out this right here. Look at Arizona, New Mexico. Wildfire.com. Excuse me. Let me check out that wildfire.com. Because I know if I go off the air, I'm probably going to forget about this. And I probably want to bookmark this, so let me try to bring that up. Hopefully this doesn't impact the stream too much. Wildfiretoday.com, sorry. Wildfiretoday.com. Thank you, Fun with Tech. Because it is kind of hard to get wildfire information from outside the U.S. Because a lot of it is U.S. government, and they don't look at Canada too much. But there it is. Nice picture from the polar orbiters, Kamloops. This is British Columbia. And the province line looking like that. There's BC, there's Alberta, and then you can see Washington down here, Seattle, located right there. So lots of fires inland from Vancouver and all the way up to Fraser Valley. And this is a very big bear country, let me tell you that. When am I taking my first shot at a winter forecast? I don't know. We could probably take a look at the teleconnections and El Nino and see what that shows. Hurricane Emily hit Tampa today. Thanks, Eric Hall. Tropical storm, rainy and wet. David Moore says, Tim, good night on the stream. The only buffering I had was during the loading for GR Level 2. Ron says, click the like button. The books are a good read. Get them. Thank you, Ron. Texas countryside looks very peaceful. Sue says I need to set myself reading Tim's books. And Justin says $100 per megabit. Yeah, what they're offering me is 3 up and 3 down for about $300. And then if I want to pay $550, I'll get the top level internet, and that's 6 and 6. Which is not great, but 6 up, you can definitely push out HD, no problem, with 6 up. Unfortunately, due to the way the political stuff is and the net neutrality and the way the FCC deals with the internet companies, I seriously doubt we're ever going to see the internet upgraded in this area, which is kind of sad, but it is possible I may move here in the next few years, and that'll definitely change my options there a bit. Okay, let's head into the forecast. We'll make this pretty quick and short and sweet. So we've got a pretty good idea what's going on. Everything is driven by this big high across the Midwest. Big high covering this area. The old frontal boundary into the southwest, and then a new one coming south out of Canada right there. And you can see up in British Columbia that easterly flow probably pushing the smoke into Victoria and probably Seattle, Tacoma. Okay, so running this ahead into Wednesday and Thursday, you can see Texas is pretty active, and then things also get very active up in the Central Plains. Very strong front coming southward. Very impressive pressure gradient and very strong cold air advection right there. So this is stronger than I expected. So the frontal position's kind of looking like this on Thursday morning. And then the old front is way down here. So here comes the next surge of cold air. Thunderstorms for Oklahoma and Arkansas by Thursday night. And then for Friday, looks like that's pushed all the way through Texas. And then for the weekend, high pressure kind of dominating everything. Frontal boundaries and this graveyard here in Texas and Louisiana, New Mexico. Okay, then for next week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, more of these. I'm trying to remember the word for these things. I want to say migratory, but that's the wrong word. We'll basically call these progressive systems. These are coming out of Canada. And the name comes from, let's see, there was a Global Weather Center forecaster that came up with these naming schemes. Sorry, guys, I'm going to have to probably look that up. But anyway, there's a name for these systems. Basically, it's kind of like Alberta Clippers. They move southward or southeastward into the eastern U.S., and you get a very progressive pattern. And that's different from these big highs that just kind of sit over the eastern U.S., like the ridge from the Bermuda high, that kind of thing. That's a very stagnant pattern. So we've got a very progressive, fast-changing pattern, and that'll keep us very busy over the next few weeks. And there comes the next system southward on the 12th. There's the 13th, and just, very, very changeable weather. And I guess we're getting very close to the 21st for that eclipse. So if the pattern is very progressive like this on the 21st, it's going to be very hard to determine the best locations for viewing, because the clouds could be over the Dakotas or they could be in the Midwest. But statistically, the best chances are going to be Nebraska and around Kansas City up to Casper. That's where I would put my money. Okay, so that's about all I got there, and I think we'll just go ahead and wrap this up. Ryan Toomey's says, tornado warning posted for West Palm Beach. We can take one last look at that. Let me bring up all the warnings. Yeah, there it is, that little storm right there. Let's see, that's a little far from West Palm Beach. This is more up near Port St. Lucie. Tornado warning, radar indicated rotation. So that's kind of in the back of the storm, very embedded. This is kind of a dangerous kind of tornado because you can't see what's going on. It's rain wrapped, but fortunately it's probably pretty weak. This would probably be an EF0 tornado, if anything. But yeah, you can see the rotation right there in the radar. Radar is to the south, which means we have inbound right there. This is negative rotation or negative velocity, and then here we have outbound. This is positive. So this is showing rotation right in this area right here, and it's broad scale rotation. However, we're sampling this up at, let's see, 11,000 feet. So we would really want to use a radar that's a little bit closer if it's available. So the center of the circulation located right there. And you can see a little bit of a notch maybe here. We could go up to higher levels and look if there's a dry region, like a weak echo region, and I don't really see much of anything. But there's the core just to the north, getting tops of about 30,000 feet there. Maybe 41,000 feet. So a little bit of action there in Florida. And there's the rest of the line extending all the way to Cape Coral. Okay, what else here? Carl putting together an order for 4 books. I appreciate that. I want to tell you guys I appreciate it even more this time of year because this is the lean time of the year for my business. Especially getting into September and October, so every little bit counts, and I do appreciate that. And what I'm hoping to do is get that upper level analysis book finished. That's a huge priority, and I'm trying to get Digital Atmosphere done as soon as possible, and I'm working with that developer there in the Ukraine. Monopoly. DSL in the country, brutal for us, brutal in the U.S., according to Michael O. there. Ryan pointed out that was a new tornado warning. Okay. Review and refresh. Okay. So anyway, that's the... Oh yeah, there's something going on. Oh, good grief. Okay, I'm sorry. I really got screwed up here on the times. This is 1:34Z. This is a lot earlier. Forgot to hit the stupid forward button. So there's the current picture. Sorry about that. Little confusion. Ryan is on the ball there. And there's the new warning. Radar indicated rotation. That's near Friend Village, Paget Island. And the storm relative velocity, can't really pick out much of anything. But I know the Miami office is tracking that, so they've probably got good reason for that warning there. Backed it up a little bit. You could definitely see the bow echo structure there. That's one thing. And the inflow notch right there. So that's one area I would be concerned about. We'll go back even further. Oh yeah, look at that storm right there. So that's definitely got an HP structure. And there's the notch. So very easy to see the rotation right in there. Looks like maybe two centers, maybe one up to the north. That is interesting. So a little bit of embedded rotation, and then of course I would probably put out a warning for this anyway, and I think that's what the office did. They kind of looked at both areas and they went with kind of a wide polygon right there. And bow echo pushing eastward. So maybe a little bit of winds there along the Highway 98 area. All right, that's about all I got for tonight. I appreciate you all watching, and I can see that this has entertained everybody because the graph showing kind of a very slight upward trend. So that's good to see. And I hope you all enjoy the weathercast. And I'm trying to think. Okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and close it out. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get on an earlier schedule there, 8 o'clock, back to the usual time, and we'll cover some more weather here. So thank you very much. Thank you, Michael O., for upping the Patreon donation. Good grief, that's very much appreciated. If anyone else can afford to chip in, please do so. That's what Michael O. says there. So, yeah, maybe we can get this DSL thing going soon. So thanks, and we'll see you all tomorrow.